All right, it's Friday here in Brisbane, and I thought I'd have a little bit fun with a video that's a little bit different from normal, and something that has come up quite a bit, I guess, informally in conversations in a lot of my mentoring conversations with mentees and various other discussions. So today I want to go through what the success rates are of the various things that I've applied for and done throughout my career to date. I want to talk about some of the numbers. I'll give a couple of hopefully interesting anecdotes about some particular examples of particularly good or particularly bad experiences with applying or submitting things. I don't have any particular agenda here apart from familiarizing some of the people who've been asking with what the numbers are actually like. This is definitely not intended to be one of those humble brag videos, but some of it, of course, can always come across that way. And it's also not meant to be one of those stories of endless rejection culminating in final success, which you see out and about. It's really just to present some of the numbers from my actual career, sometimes up to 20 years worth of data, and see whether that is helpful or interesting to some of my viewers. All right, let's get started. So for the first category, I want to talk about publishing and my experiences publishing or submitting papers. I should note that the activities I'll talk about in today's video vary from activities which I've led entirely by myself. It's been a sole lone effort, and for some things like fellowships, that will become very apparent. For other activities, it will be activities where I was part of a very large team, definitely not the lead on the team, sometimes playing a relatively small role. Where it's important, I'll sort of enunciate those differences, but the video does represent a huge variety of mechanisms and ways in which I've been involved in things. Nature and science papers. So as a young PhD student and postdoc, I was always captivated by a lot of the papers that appeared in Nature and Science, and it has always been my dream to write and do some research that was worthy of appearing in Nature and Science. I know the various merits and shortcomings of these prestige journals are much debated in the community, but it has been something that I've been interested in. I haven't submitted a large number of papers to Nature and Science, but as of now, my success rate in getting into the top Nature or Science journals is 0% from a very small number of attempts. I've published or submitted to some of the partner journals of Nature. I've done a commentary in Nature Machine Intelligence. I've had one of my most entertaining rejections ever from Science Robotics, where we submitted a pre-submission inquiry and were given the go-ahead, and then my student put a huge amount of work into getting the paper ready, submitted it, and then I think we got desk rejected in something like 19 hours. So haven't been very successful with these prestige journals, but it's been an interesting learning experience nevertheless. Top computer vision conferences. So the research I do with collaborators spans a number of fields. My primary work is in robotics and robotics positioning and navigation and mapping, but a lot of our work spills over into related fields like machine learning and computer vision, as well as sometimes into more computational neuroscience type areas. Computer vision conferences are some of the most hotly contested publication venues in terms of raw citation metrics. I think currently the international conference CVPR, Computer Vision and Pattern Recognition, is by raw citation metrics the fourth most highly ranked publication venue out of all venues across all of research, at least English language-based research. So these are extremely competitive, hotly contested venues to get into. We've submitted a moderate number of papers to these conferences over the years. I'm actually not 100% sure of our exact acceptance rate, but I think our acceptance rates are generally roughly in line with the average acceptance rates for those conferences, which is anywhere from 20 to 35% for the more competitive ones. The one most recently, I think that we're most proud of, was a massive team effort on a visual place recognition paper that was led by my colleague Toby Fisher. and that was accepted into a relatively recent CVPR. But often there's huge amounts of work are put in, and the paper is rejected. I've always found the computer vision review community particularly tough going. Probably the most famous example of that from my personal experience was we submitted my Sequence Slam paper to the ICCV conference, which is one of the top computer vision conferences in 2011. It got absolutely eviscerated, hammered in the reviews. There were drop-down boxes where the reviewers picked the I would be disappointed or very disappointed were this paper to be accepted to the conference. This was the work I had been the most excited about in many years. So we turned around, resubmitted the paper to 𝐸𝐸, the main robotics conference in 2012, basically unchanged just because we believed so strongly in the work. It went on to win the best robot vision paper at 𝐸𝐸. A follow-on paper that year was submitted to Robotics Science and Systems 2012, which is one of the other top boutique robotics conferences. It was nominated for a Best Paper Award at that conference, and that paper, as of today, has well over 1,000 citations. So I think that was a valuable lesson relatively early in my career, that these review systems can be very, very fickle, and you never know what you're going to get with a particular submission. Robotics conferences. So robot conferences like 𝐸𝐸 and IROS are my group's bread and butter publication venue. We've submitted, I would say, several hundred papers to these venues over the last 20 years. They are a one-step review process, so you get reviews and then you get a decision. There's no rejoinder or rebuttal process, although if you get accepted, there's some chance to make final changes to your paper. This review process is still relatively noisy, and again, I can't easily get the exact statistics, but I think on average, the papers that I'm associated with are hitting about the 40% average for the conference over many hundreds of papers that we've submitted. The best papers that we've submitted haven't always got in, and sometimes papers that were not as strong as we would have liked to have been by submission time have got in with rave reviews. So again, it's a pretty noisy, volatile process. 𝐸𝐸 2015. So in 2015, our group had the most incredibly brutal experience with 𝐸𝐸. So we submitted 7 papers to the conference and we had 1 paper accepted. And at the time, I remember it was such a brutal punch to the gut. We felt horrible. The lone student who got their paper up was happy that their paper got up, but they couldn't believe the carnage around them. We were spending so much time consoling the students and researchers who had worked so hard to submit these papers. And I don't think there was anything malicious or systematic. I think when you're submitting a handful of papers every year for 20 years, you are, from a statistical perspective, going to have years like this where all or almost all of your papers, even if they're good, get rejected. So that was a really brutal year, and it took us a little time to recover from that. We've had other years where almost all of our papers have been accepted, so it swings and roundabouts. You have good years and you have bad years. Robotics journal papers. We publish our more long-form, more mature research typically in robotics journals. Until a few years ago, these were very much long-form robotics journals, which are much, much larger bodies of work. In the last few years, the robotics community has instituted the IEEE Robotics and Automation Letters, which is a short-form journal. It's more substantive than a conference paper, but it's not necessarily a 20 or 30-page full-blown traditional robotics journal paper. This system overall has been fantastic. It has guaranteed relatively fast review turnarounds. It's a 2-stage process where if you get through the initial review, you get a chance to revise and resubmit. And most of the statistics on journal paper acceptances are pulled from this just because I have the numbers easily at hand. And so for this particular venue, over I think about 55 papers we've submitted, we're operating on about a 56% acceptance rate. One of the things I love about this journal and the review process is I feel like if we submit work that is really compelling and really stunning, it has a very high chance of eventually getting into the venue. For a computer vision or robotics conference, as we've found through painful experience, if we submit really stunning work, there's still a chance that random volatility, random reviewers will basically kill the paper. And so one of the things I really like about these short form journal outlets is that I think they reduce the noise of the reviewing process a little bit. And so I think overall this has been a massive boon for the robotics community. Workshops and research events. One of the other things in the robotics and computer science communities that you can do is submit workshop proposals. Workshops have increasingly in robotics and computer vision and machine learning become some of the key events at a conference. Some of the workshops at some of the big conferences have 600, 800 people attending. And so proposing a workshop is increasingly a big deal. And over the years, I've been part of a very large number of workshop proposals. And the success rate for that, again, it's pretty hard to determine, but I think we've had a relatively high success rate with these proposals. Interestingly, some of the rejections we've had, apart from the expected rejections of this year, we don't think this topic is sufficiently important. Some of the times we've had successful series of workshops where eventually the workshop gets rejected, not because the organizers of the conference don't think it's a great idea, but because they want to give it a little bit of a break and maybe give some other topics a chance. Workshops are fantastic. Organizing them is a great experience. At the upcoming ICRA 2024 workshop in Japan, I'm co-organizing 2 workshops and speaking at a 3rd. They are a fantastic part of conferences in the robotics and related discipline areas. All right, so for the next part of this video, I want to talk about putting in and submitting research grants, research fellowships, research center applications. So these are your bread and butter applications for funding to run some sort of research project or fellowship. Defense research schemes. I can't put all of the details of everything I apply or am involved in applying for because there's just too many things. But I wanted to put this one in as an example of how a relatively established, relatively successful researcher, that's me, still have horrendous experiences with success rates of schemes. So over a couple of applications, so it's not a large number of applications, I've been trying to submit proposals to provide a up-to-date, detailed analysis of the state of play of robotics and autonomous systems, autonomy and AI, for the Australian defence context. It's the same education work I do for so many other sectors, and so far I have a 0% success rate in getting any of these proposals, which are basically a detailed research paper or guide output. I've had 0% chance in getting them accepted. So that, again, that's just to emphasize that even when you're established in your career, you can have horrendous runs where no one seems to be interested in what you're doing. Now, I have the experience and I guess the hard-won successes and failures over the years to know that this could just be there was a lot of competition for the proposal. It could be because the work for the proposal wasn't good enough. But in a lot of those cases, I also know that there's mitigating circumstances. For example, I know that the same organizations or similar organizations have invited me to give talks and keynotes advising them about these topics. So I know that there is interest there. I know that they in some way value my contribution, but for whatever reason, I haven't been successful in this scheme. ARC discovery projects. So ARC in Australia stands for the Australian Research Council. It's our main standard federal research funding body for general research. It's probably a little bit like the NSF or National Science Foundation in the US. And they have a range of research schemes, research grants, research fellowships, research centers. And I'm going to talk about a few of those very quickly. So the bread and butter standard project is called an Australian Research Council Discovery Project. It's a project that typically runs for 3 years. You might be able to employ a postdoc or some PhD students, a little bit of funding for equipment and travel. It's the sort of standard mid-sized, small to mid-sized research grant that you get in Australia. So I've been involved in a number of these proposals, and my success rate is roughly around, I think, 25%. Which is about the scheme's average, possibly a tiny bit. Actually, no, it would be about the same as the scheme's average. Some of those are grants that I've led. One of those was a successful sole investigator, so I was the only one on the grant. And some of them end up being ones where I've played a minor role. One of the things we're always trying to do is mentor and support early career researchers. And one of the rules of thumb for doing that is to put a senior mentor on the grant who is the senior researcher who would advise and mentor the early career researcher on the grant. We've had mixed experiences with that. One of the unfortunate things that we've experienced multiple times is you'll get reviews back where the reviews in the same page praise the awesomeness of the senior researcher and then completely kill and criticize the early career researcher one paragraph later. And so although the idea of having a mixed experience team has been nice, the reality has been that isn't always supported by the system. ARC linkage projects. So I've only been involved with a very small number of these linkage projects. These are a type of fundamental research project that is a little bit more applied and is linked to one or more industry or eligible government partners working on fundamental research, but with a little bit more of an applied or translational focus. Again, these are projects where if you've done the hard work and really developed a really strong relationship with the partner and they're really investing and supporting the bid, and the bid of course is in an important area and it's well written and the plan is feasible, you have a relatively good chance of getting them. ARC LEAF grants. These are large or potentially quite large Australian Research Council equipment grants. I've been involved in a few of them, never as the lead, and I think the success rate for those is around 50% roughly. What did I write? Yeah, 50%. Again, this involves significant support from industry partners. They're fairly crisp proposals. I think they have to be spent within the year. Roughly, and so we've been involved in some in the space area and also in the autonomous vehicle area. ARC ITTCs. So ITTCs are Industrial Transformation Training Centres. They are a medium-sized, federally funded, federal research centre with a strong emphasis on research training for PhDs and postdocs and strong emphasis on linkage to industry. So again, I've been a part of a small number of these. I'm currently on 2 that are running, and the success rate there in terms of applications has been about 50%. These are things where you can't sort of whip them up in an afternoon. They require sometimes years of development and bringing together a consortium of partners. So they're a very substantial effort, and so you want the success rate ideally to be at least at a reasonable level because it's a huge investment of time. ARC Centres of Excellence. So in Australia, in terms of what's funded by the Australian Research Council, the main federal research funding body, the largest initiatives or centres for fundamental basic research are called Centres of Excellence. They're only awarded every 3 years in Australia. They run for 7 years. They have many tens of millions of dollars of investment, a large number of university and government and industry partners. They're a really, really big deal. And I've been extremely fortunate to have been part of one in robotic vision, led by my colleague, Adjunct Distinguished Professor Peter Cook. So my success rate in terms of ones I've been involved with is currently at 33%. We are submitting, or very excited to be submitting, a proposal again this year, which I am super, super, super excited about, but we know that this is a mammoth effort to put everything together, and the overall success rate might be as low as something like 10%. So we know what we're in for, but we feel the ideas are so compelling and so existentially important to Australia that we feel obliged that we have to submit it. ARC fellowships. So I've submitted a handful of Australian Research Council fellowships over the years, and in this category, the success rate of applications has been quite high, around 60%. So I think of 5 applications I've put in, 3 of them have been successful. So I put in a junior fellowship application, which was a near miss rejection my first time. That turned into an inaugural DECRA, which is a type of junior ARC fellowship that's still running today in my second attempt. I got a mid-career future fellowship on the first try, and I wrote that application, I think, in about a week or 2 weeks because I thought I was ineligible and then found out at the last minute that I was eligible. And after that, many years later, I submitted an ARC Laureate Fellowship, which is the sort of senior premier fundamental research fellowship in Australia, was unsuccessful and not particularly well ranked the first year and was successful on my second attempt. Fellowships are one of the rare areas where the fellowships that I've submitted, I've been completely and utterly happy and convinced by what I've written. With other grants and proposals, I've usually felt there were caveats or concerns about some aspects of them. I have never been really 100% happy with them, but with most of the fellowship applications, I've been like really, really happy, which is very, very rare in terms of the application I've submitted. Internal fellowship schemes. So a lot of the universities try to support their early career researchers, middle career researchers by running internal fellowship schemes. I don't think much should be read into this, but just to provide some extra context, I think I've applied for 2 or 3 of these internal fellowship schemes, and I've had a 0% success rate in any of those. Now that could just be for reasons like they implicitly wanted to recruit external talent to grow the ecosystem rather than churn over the existing ecosystem since I was already at the university. But just again, success in external schemes can sometimes be very inconsistent with success in internal schemes within your university. Substantive industry collaboration. So this is a bit of a fuzzy category, but what I really wanted to do was emphasize the amount of people and industry connections we have to develop in our field in order for a very, very small percentage of them to lead to some substantive, concrete collaboration. So what I've done here is very much estimated the percentage of meaningful interactions with industry or government partners where there's a real intent to do something that have eventually translated into a substantial collaboration, whether it's a grant or an industry project or a commercialization project. And that 10% is only of the conversations and relationships that have developed to a substantial degree. If you include all the initial conversations, points of contacts, initial leads, that probably drops down, well down into single-digit percentage figures. This is not the same for all different disciplines. I know some other disciplines where they talk to a very small number of industry partners and keep the same industry partner for 20 years. Pretty much continually. This is not the case in a lot of fast-moving tech fields. Apart from anything else, companies appear and disappear very quickly. Relationships are challenging to develop as well because the person you spend so much time developing a relationship with is often only at the company for an average of 12 to 18 months. So it's a very dynamic, very sometimes chaotic field, and you have to talk to a lot of people in order to land some real, concrete, ongoing collaborations. Tech, grants, and fellowships. So if you work in many disciplines, but especially in the computer science, sort of hard disciplines like robotics, machine learning, computer vision, and so forth, one of the schemes that you can apply for are these grant schemes or fellowship schemes from some of the major tech companies that are around the world. These are very competitive to get, but they're also amazing types of grants to get because they often come to the university as what's called an unrestricted gift. And what this means is that the university will struggle to accidentally or on purpose claw the money back from you, and there's very little limitations to what you can do with the money. So I was, for example, a successful recipient of a Microsoft Research Fellowship. Many years ago, it was about $100,000 US for the non-American fellowships. And I was still using bits of that money, I think, about 10 years later, because it was the last source of money that I used, because its flexibility and the fact that it was always there meant it was more valuable dollar for dollar than just about any other source of funding I had. I've applied for a number of other grant schemes from a lot of these tech companies. We're recently wrapping up a grant from Amazon, for example, and we've also had a number of rejections there. But they are a very nice type of scheme you can get. They're typically not a huge amount of money, but they're very, very useful as part of your funding repertoire as an academic. Finally, because I do a lot of talk about careers and career planning, I want to talk about jobs and jobs that you might apply for. So I work in robotics, I work in navigation, mapping, SLAM systems, tech, computer vision, all that sort of stuff. And that has been a very, very hot field, both in academia, but also in the industrial world or in industry for the last 10 years plus. And so there have been a huge number of job opportunities that have come up at various stages. Now, I have an amazing job at my current university, which is amazing in many aspects, but there have been points over the years where I've seriously explored a very small number of job opportunities. And so the percentage that I gave there was in terms of jobs where there has been the intent to go all the way to either getting a concrete job offer or are getting rejected from a concrete job offer. And that's a small handful of occurrences over the last 2 decades that I've been in academia. And so the success rate there is about 50%, I think. I've had one completely negotiated job offer in the autonomous vehicles industry several years ago, which I pursued, which I ended up declining, plus a lot of other more preliminary conversations just because it was such an exciting field. I went through the full interview process over 6 months of pre-chats and then the sort of presentation plus I think 7 one-hour interviews over 2 days with one of the major tech companies for a very, very senior role on the project, the dream project of a lifetime. I was drawn to it not just because of the company but because of the project, and ended up getting rejected. I think at the final stage, reputedly, I was one of 2 candidates for this very senior role at this company. And when I talked to the recruiter a year or 2 later, I found out that I probably would have changed roles at least twice, and unlike a lot of other people, I was considering it because of the excitement of the specific project, not because of joining the company per se, and so that would not have been a good outcome in retrospect, but it was a really interesting experience. I wanted to go through that full suite of intensive interviews with senior executives at the company, and that was a really interesting process to go through regardless of the outcome. All right, so that wasn't a particularly formal or well-structured video, but I hope some of the numbers that I've presented have demystified some of the aspects of what being a moderately successful academic at my career stage looks like. You'll have a lot of colleagues yourself. Some of them will have much higher success rates. I know I've had colleagues who haven't experienced a rejection for many years in a row, and it's been really brutal when they did start getting rejected, when random volatility caught up with them. And I know people who have gone through incredible runs of rejections where they've had sort of double digits rejections in a row in the same scheme before they were finally successful. It takes all sorts. How much appetite you have and how much resilience you have to handling rejection depends a lot on your job, your career stage, your personal life responsibilities. A lot of it is dependent on the privilege of your position. I'm in a privileged position, I know that. And so thinking about these numbers and what your strategy is and how much risk you want to take is a good thing to include as part of your career planning and part of your reflection on how your career is going. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a lot of fun to shoot, and I will see you next time.